There, that is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
Wow, I've never seen a plane flying so low. And we looked out at it, all of a sudden, boom, it seemed like it wasn't even real.
Welcome back to the Kaiser Report. A special treat. I've got David DeGraw standing by in New York for a special exclusive interview. He is the author of The Economic Elite versus the People of the United States. David, welcome to the Kaiser Report.
Thank you, Max. Great to be on here with you. Well, primarily it's the economic top 1% of the country, really half of 1%. When I talk about the economic elite, I'm primarily talking about the business roundtable, which is where all the CEOs of the biggest companies come together and they dominate the American political process, through campaign finance, through lobbying. You hear about the healthcare lobby, the financial reform lobby. Well, these people are all coming from the business roundtable where they're getting their plans to basically eliminate the U.S. middle class. And
exactly how unequal is the wealth in the U.S.? Can you break it down a little bit more for us in terms of numbers? 400
of the richest Americans control more wealth and have more net worth than 155 million Americans combined. The United States now has the highest poverty rate in the world. We have over 50 million people living in poverty, and this number is growing by the day. Over 5 million families have lost their home. Bankruptcies have had a 32% increase. 1.5 million people have filed for bankruptcy. The 50 million have no health care. Medical bankruptcies are skyrocketing. They make up 60% of the bankruptcies being filed. And of the medical bankruptcies, 75% of the people who have health care insurance are filing for medical bankruptcy.
Professor Emeritus of Linguistics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Professor Noam Chomsky. Great pleasure having you here.
Glad to be with you.
All right, great to have you. Now, of course, Professor Chomsky has written over 100 books, a little prolific to say the least, including American Power and the New Mandarins, Manufacturing Consent, the Political Economy of the Mass Media. He's apparently the 8th most cited human being in history, just behind Marx, Lenin, Shakespeare, Aristotle, the Bible, Plato, and Freud. Although the Bible's not a human. All right, and his new book is Hopes and Prospects. What do you think are the major problems with American foreign policy?
Well, first of all, it's not that I'm not a fan of American exceptionalism. That's like saying I'm not a fan of the moon being made out of green cheese. It doesn't exist. Powerful states have quite typically considered themselves to be exceptionally magnificent, and the United States is no exception to that. The basis for it is not very substantial, to put it politely. The problems with American foreign policy are rooted in its central nature, which we know about, or we can know about if we want to. So you go back to, say, the Second World War. That's the point at which the U.S. became a global power. Before that, it had conquered the national territory, pretty much exterminated the population, conquered half of Mexico, expanded into the essentially pretty much taking control over the Western Hemisphere, established, invaded the Philippines, killed a couple 100,000 people. But the real global power up to that time was Britain and others. The United States was not a global power. But it became so during the Second World War. And planners met and carefully laid out plans. They're perfectly public for how they would run the post-war world. The basic idea was that there should be what they called a grand area, which would be completely under U.S. control, and within which the U.S. would not tolerate any expression of sovereignty that interfered with U.S. global designs. And there would be no competitor permitted, of course, to the U.S. And that area was pretty expansive. It included the Western Hemisphere, East Asia, the former British Empire, which the U.S. would take over. That includes, crucially, the Middle East energy reserves, which are the main ones in the world. And top planners pointed out that if we control Middle East oil, we can control the world. Well, and then, of course, it included as much of Eurasia as possible.
Professor Chomsky, thank you for being with us today. Let's start this conversation with some aspects of your background. How do you define your political ideology?
I was spending a lot of my time in secondhand bookstores in downtown New York. There were a lot of emigres, many of them from the Spanish Revolution. I met Spanish anarchists who I was particularly interested in. I spent time at the anarchist offices and just picked up a general left political education and sort of went on from there. My main interests actually through the 1940s were what is now called anti-Zionism. Then it was called Zionism. It's support for working for a Jewish Arab working class cooperation in a binational state as opposed to a Jewish state.
Professor, let's talk about the U.S. domestic policy. How do you evaluate the Obama administration to this moment?
If you peel away the rhetoric, he's a familiar centrist Democrat. He won office primarily because of the powerful support of the financial institutions, which preferred him to McCain, and they play an overwhelming role in the economy now. He did energize lots of people, particularly young people, but others too, who perceived him as something quite different and are disillusioned when they see him returning to sort of mainstream center-right democratic policies. But I don't see anything surprising in that. As far as his foreign policy is concerned, for example, he delivers impassioned rhetoric about ridding the world of nuclear weapons. At the same time, his policies are undermining that and persisting in traditional stance. Most important is the Middle East nuclear weapons-free zone. Now that's the Western powers actually agreed to that, including the U.S. in 1995 at the nuclear weapons. There's a regular 5-year review conference, one going on right now. And in order to induce the non-aligned countries to accept the Non-Proliferation Treaty, the U.S. agreed to, and its allies, to have a nuclear weapons-free zone established in the Middle East. Well, of course, it never happened.